So I was able to acquire a copy of Sunrise on the Reaping from Libby, but I've been in a really huge slump, so I haven't really been reading too much. And honestly, I was kind of putting off this one too until my sister actually texted me ranting about the book, and I had to be like, no, 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 I haven't read it yet. Shush, shush. I don't want to be spoiled. And she's like, well, you need to read it. And so I'm like, okay, fine. I will set down the time. I will read it. So this is the review of that book because I did read it. I did enjoy it. And I wanted to talk about it and discuss some things that I thought were interesting or that made me excited about the book. That being said, there are going to be spoilers in this video. So if you haven't read the book, you should read the book. I started the book and I realized immediately that I'm an idiot. Like, I'm a huge idiot because I didn't really fully register why it was called Sunrise and the Reaping, which is just absolutely pathetic to say because obviously it's about the reaping that happens before the Hunger Games, but it took Lenore Dove saying Sunrise on the Reaping for me to go, oh, that reaping. I don't know. I don't know what I was thinking. I I may be a college graduate, but I am a little dumb. Anyway, I keep reading, and a little bit after that is when the reveal that the reaping is actually on July 4th happens, and that is like such a I don't know how to describe what I was feeling. Like I was horrified, but also like, no, that makes sense. Yeah, that would be when Pan Am would have the reaping on, because of course it is, because this is supposed to be America, but after horrible things have happened. Of course the capital would take what's supposed to be a day of celebration for Americans and just turn it into the most murderous, horrendous thing ever. And of course it's Haymitch's birthday, like I when I tell you I was horrified, that is not enough of a description. And I text my sister, I'm like, oh my God, did we know that previously? Did I miss that? As for the actual content of the book, we kind of know going in how the book's going to end to an extent because in Catching Fire, Katniss obviously is watching Haymitch's games, how he won. So we know he's going to throw that axe into the barrier and it's going to hit the chick in the head. Like, we know that. I didn't remember who died at the end, so the entire book I was terrified he was going to kill one of his teammates. The entire book too. I'm like, or leading up to the book, I'm wondering, okay, how are we going to get to that point? How is he going to figure out that the barrier bounces back? And so while I'm thinking about this, Wyrus shows up, and it was like, oh, okay. And then Mags shows up. I'm like, oh, sure, that's really cool. I'll take it. And then a few pages later, Beatty shows up. That's what my sister was texting me about, is the fact that Ampert, Beatty's son, is in the games. And it is just awful and horrifying, and it is Snow's way of punishing his kid, right? Um, and I texted her minutes prior going, so is Beatty gonna show up since Wyrus and Mags are here? Like, I'm waiting for Beatty, and, fortunately for her, immediately after I go, man, I miss Senna. And she starts talking about that and doesn't have to worry about accidentally spoiling it for me. Yeah, that sucks. I had to take a break at that point. That kind of broke my heart. And even prior to that, we already had some awful things happening, with Luella and then Lulu, who I was terrified was going to be a mutt, not just some poor kid taken illegally. Honestly, one of the most interesting things about this book was how trustworthy or trusting all of the kids were. They were very much like, "Oh, you said you won't kill me, so you won't." Versus, all of Hunger Games, Katniss is like, I don't trust you. You're probably gonna kill me. You're definitely gonna kill me, so I don't trust you. The only person I kind of trust is Peeta, and even then, I don't know what he's up to." Versus Haymitch is like, I am your brother now. I'm not going to kill you. I will kill myself before I kill you. And it's just so interesting because when Welly responds to Haymitch calling for her, all I could think was, oh, honey, you don't know if he wants to kill you or not. He doesn't, but you don't know that. Like, do not respond to that. And so the fact that it just shows how childlike they are. It's not until like the 74th with Katniss where people are actually like, okay, I need to survive so I can actually get home to my family. Like Katniss is actually thinking I'm gonna kill people. There's a point in the Hunger Games where she thinks it's not that different than hunting. If I think of it like hunting, it won't be too hard. At no point does Haymitch think that. The only time Haymitch like actually kills someone is proper self-defense, where he is attacked and then fights back, and then is a little shocked that he killed them, and then obviously the very ending. But she threw the axe, not him. He just ducked. So he only killed 2 people if you get like semantics about it, unless, you count all the deaths that Snow punished him for, which I wouldn't personally. And that's the other thing with this book that I really was not expecting and really caught me by surprise was the fact that the revolution had been in the works for 25 years more or less, you know, it explains why Haymitch was able to get everyone to trust Katniss because he'd already started working for the revolution way back then. Yeah, he kind of fell off track for a few years, but the fact that he was willing to try again and he had been able to do some stuff and was willing to try again through Katniss shows, okay, well, yeah, we can trust her to Plutarch and who was also there, and Beatty and Wyrus and Mags, and it just everyone's willing to put their trust in her because they couldn't do it last time, but maybe she can because now she's got an army. Which, you know, I think it was Plutarch that said it. They made a point of saying like, well, the next time we try this, they'll have backing. We don't have backing right now, which was just a very interesting detail. Like I liked it a lot. It also, but it begs the question of like, how was Plutarch able to get away with it in the sense that like how did Snow not catch on to Plutarch at all for those 25 years? I don't know. I liked Effie's, you know, little appearance. I liked that a lot. It was very nice to see them interacting with Haymitch not being drunk. The fact that like Maisley was calling people her sibling was breaking my heart, and then when Merrily shows up at the very end and Haymitch thinks it's Maisley, that fully broke my heart. That wasn't cool. Didn't like that. Wasn't a fan of that. And then, you know, obviously at the very end we have Lenore Dove's death, which I knew the second that her poem was revealed to be Nevermore, whatever it's called, the Raven one, by Edgar Allan Poe. I knew the second that was revealed that she was dead. It was one of the things I texted my sister. I went, "Oh, the Raven, she's dead. Yeah, she's dead. There's you don't let someone live after that." And then it also brought up the conversation of like, wow, I didn't even really register that the poems in this, the songs they call them, are poems from our real life, and then that sent me down an existential crisis. So let's not get into that. There's a lot of little things that were like, oh, okay, so that's how that character got that, and that's how that happened, and that's why that's that, you know. But then it also like brought on some more questions, and one of the biggest questions I had at the very end of the book was, does Lenore Dove's death lead to the end of the Covey? Obviously, Clerk Carmine and Tam Amber are still alive, but Tam Amber is in his 60s during the 50th quarter to Quell, and then Clerk Carmine is gay and in District 12, where I sincerely doubt they have IVF or surrogacy or anything like that. The only way the Clerk would have been able to have a kid is he went and had sex with a woman, which I don't think he's going to be doing because he's gay, you know? So I don't. He can obviously adopt, but then it's not an actual Covey kid. He can still name them the same way, but we don't have any appearance of the Covey in Hunger Games, so this death of Lenore Dove could be the explanation for why that happened, you know? As well as I had a question at the very beginning of the book, which was, well, if Haymitch was friends with Burdock, who we find out is Katniss's dad, you know, why doesn't he help Katniss when they're in the scene? Which, of course, when we end with everyone Haymitch loves dying brutally and he's terrified to make a connection again and fear that they're going to die, yeah, of course he's not going to go help Katniss. Of course he's not. Why would he? He's terrified he's going to kill her. I don't blame him. I'd be terrified too. You know, that question was answered, but I am still curious about Lenore Dove if that's the end, because there's still not a little bit of like contention that can be held around Lucy Gray. Obviously, she could have escaped to the wild. Her grave does appear at the end of Haymitch's book, but you know, who's to say they didn't just put it there so they had something to remember her by? She still could have lived somewhere and had kids, could have escaped. I don't know. We don't know. Only Suzanne knows. And I guess all the fictional characters, I don't know. So it kind of leaves you at the point of like, well, okay, that was depressing. That was an awful experience that I enjoyed. What now? Is this going to be the last story? Because whose story is left to tell? I don't want it to end. But who else can we hear from that will make an impact the way that both Snow and Haymitch's story have made? Because I, honest to God, when Snow's story came out, I was like, well, what's the point of this? I want to hear Haymitch's story. Until I read it and was horrified the entire time. You know, Suzanne Collins has got like a really good job of just being horrifying. She's terrifying. I love and hate her at the same time. She's awful. Great. It's, you know, I wish she'd stop breaking my heart. She's not going to, but I wish she would. With that being said, my actual review of the book, without going through each section, is that I thought it was a fantastic book. I thought it was wonderfully done. I'm definitely going to be reading it again. I don't own it yet, but I will one day. I'm broke, so it's not going to be anytime soon. I also would like, there's like this new edition that they're like really gorgeous, but it doesn't have the Sunrise and the Reaping in the box set. So if they release a box set with Sunrise on the Reaping, I'll probably go for that one. That being said, I don't like to give books star ratings. I think they're very like opinionated and it's up to the person, but I am gonna give this one 5 stars because I do think it's 5 stars, and I think if you enjoyed the Hunger Games series and if for some reason you're watching this and haven't read it, you should. You definitely should. It's a very well done. It's very reminiscent of the original book because it's in that first person point of view again. And I understand why Snows was in third person because it kind of removes you from him. It makes sure you don't sympathize him too much because you're following him and getting to see how other people see him, and you're like, oh my god, you're a manipulative little shit, you know? So it made it like more factual in a sense while also not being factual because he is an unreliable narrator, very much so, and evil, obviously. But it makes sure you don't perceive him the wrong way, you know, versus Haymitch and Katniss are perceived very much as the children they are. Because of that first person you get to see in their head, you get to see their nonsensical thoughts. And it's just, I think it was a great distinction that she made. And I think both, I think all of the books were wonderfully written, but I think this was such a great addition to the series that I've grown up with and that I've loved since I was in elementary school, and since a bunch of people have loved since they were in elementary school. You know, like this series is fantastic, and this book broke my heart. And I don't know really what to do from here. I'm actually currently rereading Hunger Games because I didn't want to give up the world again, and going through it because I'm at the point where we're gonna meet Rue soon, and I can't handle that. If you enjoyed watching me rant about Sunrise and the Reaping and Hunger Games as a whole, please like and subscribe so you can see my next video that likely won't come out for a year. Bye.